in the story of the 36th Infantry Division of the Texas National Guard. 36th Infantry Division was created during World War I, right after America entered the war by combining the National Guard forces of Texas and Oklahoma. Thus, the symbolism of our shoulder patch, a blue arrowhead that represents Oklahoma, which before it became a state was known as the Indian Territory, with a green T for Texas superimposed on top of it. 36th Infantry Division saw 24 days of combat on the Western Front in October of 1918. Returned to the United States in 1919, was demobilized, and at that point it became an all-Texas National Guard unit. It was still a Texas National Guard unit in November of 1940 when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt called out the National Guard in a state of national emergency following the German conquest of Western Europe. Eventually, men from every state and territory would be part of the 36th, so it became an all-American unit very quickly, but it never lost that Texas identity. And in fact, through the duration of the war, it was often referred to as the Texas Army. 36th Infantry Division would train initially at Camp Bowie outside of Brownwood. It would take part in the Louisiana maneuvers, the Carolina maneuvers. It would train at Camp Blanding in Florida and Camp Edwards in Massachusetts. It would do amphibious training on Martha's Vineyard. And in March of 1943, it was sent to North Africa. The fighting was ending there, so the 36th really didn't get in action in North Africa, but it did spearhead the invasion of Italy in the Gulf of Salerno on September 9, 1943, and thus becomes the first American division to set foot on the mainland of Europe. After a week-long battle for the bridgehead, the 36th participated in the long and bloody battle up the boot of Italy, seeing some of the worst action that American soldiers experienced in World War II at places like San Pietro and the Rapito River. In May of 1944, the 36th spearheaded the breakout from the Anzio beachhead, and in June 4th of 1944, it became the first Allied division to pass through the city of Rome. 36 chased the Germans north of Rome until early July. It was pulled off the front line, given refresher amphibious training, and then on August 15, 1944, it spearheaded the invasion of southern France, Operation Dragoon, the other D-Day. Landing in southern France, the 36th then raced up the Rhone River Valley in an attempt to cut off the German 19th Army, which was retreating from southern France back toward the German and French border. On August 23rd through August 29th, 1944, the 36th saw one of its biggest, most important, and bloodiest actions of the war as it cut across in front of the German 19th Army and attempted to block their retreat. It was a seesaw battle that lasted for 5 days. At some points in the action, the combat was hand-to-hand. And while the 36th was trying to block the retreat of the German army, American air and artillery was pummeling the German railroads and roads that were leading up to the 36th position. At the end of the day, the Germans did manage to break through, but they lost almost all of their vehicles, almost all of their artillery, and tens of thousands of men. And that is the scenario that we're going to be recreating for you here today. Just a little look at that very bloody and important moment in the story of the 36th Infantry Division. We're going to be doing that with a lot of infantry, but we're also going to be using a lot of vehicles, and you see that there are a few of them here behind me. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about what we've driven out here in front of you. So at the very head of the column, we have a German Kübelwagen. Kübelwagen, that's the German equivalent of the American Jeep. It was designed by Ferdinand Porsche, and it was built by Volkswagen. Kübelwagen actually means bucket car, bucket car. And this, if you remember, old enough like me, the thing that Volkswagen made, this is what the thing was modeled after in the 1970s. Kübelwagen is a pretty good vehicle. It was a two-wheel drive, however, but one of the cool things about it is that the undercarriage is completely flat. So if it sinks into mud or snow, it can push itself along like it's a sled, which of course is very useful for the Germans in places like Russia. Behind that, we have a Jagdpanther 38, better known as the Hetzer. This is not a tank. Most people would look at that and say, hey, look at the tank. It's not a tank. This is what's known as a tank destroyer. The tank has a revolving turret. This obviously doesn't have a turret. It's got a 75mm main gun that sits in the bow, and notice how low the silhouette of this vehicle is. It's designed to be easily camouflaged, put in a hold-down position, and wait for enemy armor to get close enough to fire at effectively. It has a 4-man crew. It was a very reliable vehicle, but they don't show up on the battlefield until 1944. Behind that, we have one of the most ubiquitous American vehicles of World War II, and in fact of American military history, and that is the Jeep, the good old-fashioned Jeep. The Jeep was only supposed to last for 100,000 miles, and then they were going to be done and they were going to throw them away. There are still Jeeps driving around today, obviously, that have put on far more than 100,000 miles. It's a four-wheel drive vehicle, incredibly sturdy. You'll notice the handles on it. 4 men are supposed to be able to and can pick that Jeep up and physically move it for limited distances. And so if you get the thing stuck somewhere, you're supposed to be able to pick it up and move it around. The Jeep was used as a command vehicle, it was used as a supply vehicle, it was used as a transport vehicle. They even converted some of them into ambulances. And you put a 30 or 50 caliber machine gun on them. They're excellent scouting and patrol vehicles. Behind the Jeep and behind me is the M4 Sherman tank. This is the main medium tank of the American Army in World War II. All these things, of course, see service in both the Pacific and European theaters of war. The average Sherman carried a 75 or a 76 millimeter gun. This one's a little different. It carries a 105 millimeter cannon. We began to put these into Shermans in 1944 because one of the primary jobs of the armor was to support the infantry. And one of the primary enemies of the tank wasn't enemy tanks. Tank-to-tank combat was actually fairly rare in World War II. You were usually fighting enemy anti-tank guns. And to take on an anti-tank gun or enemy soldiers carrying anti-tank weapons, you needed a large, high-explosive shell. 75 or 76 high-explosive shell didn't have a lot of punch. 105 high-explosive shell has a great deal of punch. And so it was better suited to supporting the infantry, taking out those anti-tank guns. So they put one of these in every tank company headquarters, and they put 3 of them in every tank battalion headquarters. Sherman is gasoline powered. It has a top speed of about 30 miles per hour. The Hetzer, top speed of about 26 miles per hour. And while the Hetzer has only 2.5 inches of armor, notice that sloped armor, the 60-degree angle. So it doesn't have to have a lot of thick armor. If a shell hits it, it deflects off. Notice how many straight angles are on this Sherman tank. So the armor here is a little bit thick. It goes from 1.5 inch in the rear to 4.5 inches in the front. The turret in front is 3.5, 2.5 on the side, and even then, most German anti-tank weapons would penetrate the hull. The 5-man crew consists of a driver, an assistant driver who also mans the bow machine gun, and then the turret you have 3 crewmen. You have the tank commander, you have the gunner, and you have the loader, who also controls the coaxial 30 caliber machine gun. The tank commander has control of the 50 caliber machine gun up at the top. These things were very mechanically reliable. We built over 49,000 Shermans in World War II. The Germans, in all of World War II, and they were in it a lot longer than us, built a grand total of 49,000 armored vehicles of all types and variants. The Sherman was just one type of tank that we produced. So just the Shermans alone, there were more of them on the battlefield than there were with the Germans. And the German equipment tended to break down, tended to have fuel problems. The tank that's broke down is useless to you. The Shermans, whereas they might not be qualitatively better than the best of the German tanks, was mechanically reliable, and there were lots of them, and that made a great deal more difference. Of course, one of the problems for tanks is to deal, as I said, with enemy troops with anti-tank weapons. One of the ways that you have to do that is to keep the infantry up with the armor. But how can I, walking at 2.5 miles per hour, keep up with the Sherman running at 25 or 30? Well, the answer in the American Army is we put everybody in a vehicle. And one of the vehicles that was there to keep up with the tanks was the half-track. Half car, half track, has excellent cross-country mobility. It has a top speed of 45 miles per hour. Not really an armored vehicle, only a 1/4 of an inch to an inch of armor, though it looks like it's got a lot of resistance to it, but it really doesn't. Machine gun bullets are going to go right through this, but this thing can keep up with the tanks, can keep the infantry up with the tanks, and it was also a very versatile system. We learned that we could put artillery and anti-tank guns in them. We could use them as command posts and ambulances. We could put anti-aircraft weapons in them, or in the M4 variant that you see here, an 80 millimeter mortar, which is a very heavy weapon, hard for the infantry to carry around. So you put it in a vehicle, it can go wherever you need it to go. It has, that weapon, an effective range of 3,300 yards, a minimum range of 200 yards. You can put out 8 rounds per minute of smoke, phosphorus, or high explosive. And of course, mortar rounds are designed to go way up in the air and then drop down on a target. So they're excellent for hitting enemy troops or in trenches, on the reverse side of a ridge, behind buildings and that sort of thing. And then behind that we have a section from a 37 millimeter anti-tank battery. So the American Army at the beginning of World War II is using a 37 millimeter anti-tank gun, sort of standard for every army at the beginning of the war. And you see the gun towed by, again, our friend the Chief, and behind the gun is a trailer that would carry the ammunition and spare parts for the anti-tank gun. So you can see that one of the things that's very important in World War II is mobility, firepower, cross-country capacity. Those things are critical, and also critical is having the tremendous manufacturing capacity to make these things in their tens of thousands, to make the spare parts for them, to produce the fuel for them, to move all that across oceans, and to organize it, to move it where it's needed, when it's needed, the enormous logistical, manufacturing, organizational capacity that was so important to Allied victory in World War II. And it's said that the Allies won that war thanks to British brains, Russian blood, and American industry. And there is something to that cliche. So just a little bit about some of the things that you're going to see out here on the battlefield.
Wow, yes. But the US is the biggest this. That's why this is actually.
Big brain.
greater distances, under more cover. It would have taken more time, maybe the entire day. And the real thing went, and fragments and shrapnel would be whizzing through the air, flesh-ripping, man-killing velocity. At the end of the real thing, we would be smelling the burned flesh of tank crews as their bodies were consumed by the flames of their burning armored vehicles. At the end of the real thing, all of the combatants would not have gotten up to stand in line in front of an audience and take a bow. At the end of the real thing, there would be men who would never stand up again. Men who would never see or hear or walk or hold the hand of a loved one. At the end of the real thing, there would be telegrams going back home to talk about the regrets of the Secretary of War, that a person you knew had been killed or wounded or maimed or had simply disappeared. War is not a comic book. It's not a movie. It's not a video game. It doesn't resolve itself in a nice 2 hours of entertainment. You don't push start again and get a new life. Real war is a dirty, ugly, nasty, vicious business. And whether it is fought with guided missiles or swords and bayonets, it has always been the same. The men who fought this war did not want to fight it. They would have rather been any place else than on a battlefield. But when their country called, when they were asked to step up and confront one of the greatest evils ever created by man, they did not hesitate, they did not excuse, they did not flee, they did not protest. They raised their hand, they took the oath, they put on the uniform, and 16 million men and women went around the globe to fight the bloodiest war in human history and to destroy that evil, which was preceded by other evils and succeeded by other evils. War is a constant of human civilization. And we could wish it was not so, but all of history argues differently. The men and women who are willing to stand between civilization and tyranny, to confront dictatorship, to confront murder, to confront evil, even though they wish they didn't have to do it, are the reason that for us here today, war is a battle reenactment on an unexpectedly cool April afternoon. Whereas real war is something very different. But real war has not visited our shores except for one brief moment on December 7th of 1941 since the 1860s. And the reason for that is because of the men and women who have been willing to answer the call of duty, to stand between us and those who would destroy our prosperity and our freedoms and our independence. Whether they wore the uniform of the Revolution, or World War I, or World War II, or Desert Storm, or the wars against terror, whether they wear the uniform today, they are all a long line of heroes. One of the great privileges of working at our museum is the opportunity on almost a daily basis to meet those heroes, the men and women who wear and who have worn our uniform. They are the people that make our world as we live it today possible. And would like all of our veterans in the audience of any time period, peace or war, to raise their hands. Ladies and gentlemen, those are your heroes. Let's give them a round of applause. Obviously, we could not put on a program as complex as this without another set of heroes. And those are the men and women behind me in these vehicles, behind the scenes. They are all volunteers. They're wearing their own uniform, their own equipment, driving their own vehicles. Only a couple of the vehicles out here are owned by the museum. All the rest of them are private vehicles that are brought here. Enormous amounts of time, effort, energy, and money go into maintaining these vehicles, maintaining these weapon systems. These men and women come to Mabry, go other places to train and drill so they know how to act and react like World War II soldiers would have done. This is the first of 2 shows they're going to do this weekend. How about giving them a round of applause? In my museum career, I have had the opportunity to talk to lots of veterans. And when we talk to veterans, we use the word hero. But of the thousands upon thousands of veterans I've spoken with, I have never met one that would accept the title. To a man and to a woman, they have always told me, no, I am no hero. The heroes are my buddies who never came back. The heroes are the ones who sleep beneath the white crosses and stars of David in our national cemeteries here and at home. And when we do events like this, we do them not just to honor the heroes who can still walk among us, but to honor the heroes that they would have given the title to. And so I would ask you to rise, gentlemen, if you would uncover. Company, present arms.